Yeah, when I look at your work, it brings me back to a primitive beginning of language and of communication, and how our ancestors must have taken, slabs of clay, and with different wooden implements must have started to carve and to sketch and to rip and to etch into it and create information, and start to be able to keep records of what they were doing and how things were going on from season to season, and how their whole life revolved around their whole farming and planting and cultivating, and different systems of excavating the land so that the land could give forth what we needed to produce. And so it started to create in the human mind grids. We stopped thinking like a hunter-gatherer who thinks bushes here, rocks there, river there, danger here. We stopped thinking that way. We started thinking structurally. Get rid of the trees, get rid of the rocks, kill everything that's dangerous, and make a grid. and use the grid.
Yeah.
So this is when I say it's primitive, it's also the beginning of an evolution. So it's not that it's stagnant in a primitive state. It's coming out of a primitive state, and it's evolving into a very, very intricate, technical, and geographical, geometrical, challenging, puzzling type. It's not a simple thing that you look at, you go, it's simple, it's
right.
You look at it and it's like, wow, it's complex. This language came from it, and the language is an artistic form, an artistic expression of their life, and how they can express what they thought and what they felt onto a medium where they can show others, and others that weren't there at the time would know what had transpired, what had happened, what they had done, what had gone on. And it was just a continuation of this common wealth of knowledge of human experience. And when I look at your art, I feel that, and it's overwhelming sometimes just to try to just stare at it and try to take in what all the little parts might all come together to mean in the deeper sense of the word. And it's very moving. I find your art very, very emotional and very, very energetic. It's full of life, it's full of energy, it's full of vitality, and it really represents a lot to I think the human being and human existence and human expression.
That was one of the things that I've been talking about with a couple of collectors, was that it reminds them, and it reminded me, as I had said before, about topographical maps of cities and stuff like that. The lines were reminding me of cities, of the grids in the cities, but at the same time the texture was making me think of like a nature kind of taking back over, because this texture has such a organic look to it that it almost looks like like how when
An overgrowth.
like an overgrowth of spiders webs and leaves and stuff like that.
Yes, of
and,
course.
and you could say mountains and stuff like that are just slowly taking back over.
Well, this is exactly what does happen to civilizations that die off. If you look at the Central American, the Guatemalan cities of the Mayans, they were totally overrun by the jungles,
Yeah.
and the archaeologists had to run into buildings because they couldn't see them. They had to physically just hack away in the jungle till they hit a wall, and then they would cut around the wall, and it was a great pyramid. And they were like, wow, we just discovered a city. We're in the middle of a city in the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what your art is all about. Your art is all about flux and influx. It's all about the creation of artificiality, and then the superimposition of non-artificiality onto it, if that makes any sense to you.
But one of the things that that the work is obviously dealing with is the idea of the interior too. There is this idea of the interior, because not only can you actually see the plane now,
Yes.
you can see behind the plane, you can see through the plane, you can see around the plane, and this idea of being able to see around something is something that usually only gets talked about in sculpture.
Yes, you don't see it in this type of flat work.
Yeah.
And and when I look at it this way, it's just as intriguing as if I were facing it, regardless of the angle I'm catching them at.
Yeah.
I'm admiring something different, and I'm seeing something unique about the whole thing. The reason I hit on linguistics so much is I was an English teacher. I taught, and I did the CELTA, Certificate in English Language Teaching for Adults, by Cambridge University at the British Council in Bogota, Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
And they emphasize modern ways of looking at language and how language evolved and how language became what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so these ideas are very radical and they're artistic. It treats language as an art.
But here's the other thing, though. You look at this, you look at work like this, coming up with ideas, formations, and things that are language-based, you know that this work is not language-based. It's visual-based.
It's not. Yes.
And it has, and there's other than like grid and farming.
That's why I go to the primitive
building
part.
references and stuff like that. It's very difficult to speak about.
It is. That's why you have to go. I go to the very root of the primitive male or human creating this new world. That's what you're creating with your art. You're creating this new world, this new vision, and that's what these people did in the very beginning when they started to create their ways of recording things and of writing things down. And so I see a similarity in the beginning of it. That's the only base that I could hit where I could say, okay, this is where it might have been influenced from because of the human necessity for expression and communication. and it's gone beyond that now. It's gone to a totally higher level where you have to take it for what it is, you know, for exactly what it is, what's there.
I find when I look at you know, at these paintings, I really, I guess you could call it, I get the eye candy effect.
Yes.
Of, you know, I look at the way that the texture is moving. I look at the way that it's fallen onto other pieces of other parts of the texture and created like its own little loops and stuff that you can actually see right straight through.
Okay.
And, you know, all these little details that you can't see in a fucking photograph.
Right.
You know, photographs are nice, but this work is bordering on the sculpture, and you know, sculptors, from my experience in talking with them, they have always had problems in getting their work across in reproduction, because it's three-dimensional and it's big, you know, and it's, you know, you're like, it's one of these things you have to be in its presence
Yes.
to get it. And that's one of the things that I love about standing in front of my work, is I can sit there and look at it and go, look at how this actually look at how this yarn is like playing with the texture underneath of it. And then right here there's all this little jaggedy stuff, and then right through it you see the green of the you know, the underpainting of the chassis, you know. And
yes.
Then, like, you know, on this particular one, there's this, I had this idea of, you know, I did all the wrapping, and then I had the idea of, I had this extra piece of aluminum frame, and I attached it, and I started wrapping it again.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know, and then there's the texture went down and it went through all of it, you know. So the frame is not a literal frame anymore. It's now incorporated into the work.
Of course.
It's now literally a part of the art.
Yes.
And you know, this is something I've never seen anybody do. It's not like a painting of something. You could sit here and look at this stuff for an hour, you know, and you could just sit there and just follow little bits of it, you know. So
yes.
You're just going up and down, you know.
That's why I say it's like an alien language. It's got continuous flow. It's got a pattern. It's got a kind of like geometry to it, you know?
Yeah, I never really, when I first thought about doing this stuff, the word geometry was really not in my brain at all.
No, absolutely not.
It just happened.
Of course it did. It's geometrically amazing work.
Yeah.
Thank
you. One of the things that's been in my head for a long time is the idea of string theory. I think I told you that, you know, a long time ago I was watching this one program on cosmology, and they were talking about string theory, and one of the things that they were mentioning was that it said, for string theory to work, there needs to be something like 19 dimensions. And then it said, here's a computer representation of what 19 dimensions looks like. And it was this thing that looked like something from a horror movie that was gonna like attack you. Mm-hmm. And it just kept folding in on itself. and you were sitting there looking at it, and it just keeps folding in on itself, and it doesn't stop. And that has always been in my head. And then when I kind of came across this stuff, it was, that really started making my brain go a lot more, because I was noticing that the more that I layer, the more that I wrap, the deeper everything goes. Like there's got to be like 3 or 4, maybe 5 different levels to this wrapping that's in this particular.
Yes, of course.
Black was this? This is black on black with the green chassis and the incorporated frame. I don't know if that I don't know if that really comes across in the work, and frankly, I don't want it to come across in the work, because I want the work to be a purely visual, sensory experience. That's why I do not title these things. I don't like titling my work.
The only reason I compare it to Sumerian cuneiform writing is because it is as beautiful as cuneiform writing is to me. That's one of the things that I've seen that can compare in beauty to your artwork. So that's what the first thing my mind goes to is, okay, Sumerian cuneiform writing is that beautiful. That's it.